As a Pokemon Pocket content creator, I've received so much support from you guys to continue making TCG live content here on this channel. And because of that, and because of my already active audience from Pokemon Pocket, I wanted to help you guys out by making a video explaining the staple cards you'll see in TCG Live moving forward. Now, with that being said, there's going to be so many cards that we can't go over. So today, I'm really going to go over the cards that translate to things like Pokeball Professor Research from Pokemon Pocket and Pokemon that are similar to like Sylveon EX that provide an engine for a deck. However, the only difference is, again, this game has a 60 card deck, which means you'll have much more of these support cards and engines. With that being said, if you're a vet in TCG Live, let me know in the comments down below how I did with this staples video, if I'm missing out some other staples. And with that, I guess we can get started with everybody's favorite baby Pokemon, Budew. Budew can attack for free, just like every baby in Pokemon Pocket. However, its move Itchy Pollen deals 10 damage and says your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. Now, why is this good? Yeah, that's exactly right. Rare candies, you can't use them, which has made this tech card a really annoying card for your opponents for you to add into your deck. So you'll see this splashed around. So if you see this and you're running a stage 2 Pokemon that requires rare candy, hopefully you get the rare candy before this guy can Itchy Pollen you. Next up is Rapska, and this Pokemon has an ability that other Pokemon also have, not by the same name, but by the same effect, that says prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to your bench. So you're going to find a lot of Pokemon in this game that actually protect your bench Pokemon, which is fantastic. Next up is another baby Pokemon that we can talk about, and that's Cleffa. This one helps you draw cards, that way thinning your deck and getting to the cards that you actually need with the move Grasping Draw. Make sure though you sequence properly and use up as many cards in your hand, so that way you can get the actual benefit of drawing up to 7 cards. Like if you only have 6 cards, Cleffa is going to draw you 1. But if you only have 1 card left, well, you're drawing 6 and getting that much closer to the cards that you need. Next up is going to be 2 Pokemon. It's Dusclops and its evolution Dusknoir, which both have a similar ability. Dusclops' ability says you knock out this Pokemon and you could deal 50 damage to any Pokemon on your opponent's side of the board. Just one Pokemon takes 50. This is pretty good if you're knocking out a basic Pokemon or something like that, or trying to get that extra 50 damage. However, you use this ability, your opponent does get a prize card. Pay attention to that. And then we have its evolution, Dusknoir, that does 130 damage. Same thing though, your opponent takes a prize card, but this oftentimes also gets you a prize card in the process. Next up is Latias EX right here with Skyliner ability that says your basic Pokemon have no retreat cost. That's fantastic. You're going to see this a lot in decks that run nothing but basic Pokemon. Think like Raging Bolt and Teal Mask Ogerpon. They probably run a Latios EX to get those free retreats, but also so many other decks. Next up, we have Mew EX with the ability Restart. This also helps you thin out your deck and draw your cards. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 cards in your deck. So if you have 4 cards, you can't draw anything, which means it's probably best to use this when you have 1 or less cards in your hand. Next up is Mimikyu, and we're really going to talk about Safeguard, the ability that Oricorio has from Pokemon Pocket. And just like Oricorio, Mimikyu here cannot be attacked by or take damage from EX Pokemon. And Pokemon V, they're not really something to worry about. It's more so Pokemon EX. And Mimikyu isn't the only Pokemon that knows Safeguard. In fact, there's many other. I believe there's a Sylveon that knows Safeguard, and there's so many other Pokemon that know Safeguard that just prevents them from taking damage from EX Pokemon. So less about the card and more about the staple ability here in this game. Then we have Monkey Dory here that I guess we should talk about because it's very relevant in the current meta of TCG Live. It's ability Adrena Brain says if you have a darkness energy attached to this Pokemon, you can move up to 3 damage counters, which is 30 damage from any one of your Pokemon onto your opponent's Pokemon. Yeah, kind of busted. As you can imagine, there are certain decks that really take advantage of this guy. And Fezandipity EX. This Pokemon's ability, you'll see this probably in every single deck. And your question is like, why? Why is this card in every single deck? Well, it says when you lose a Pokemon, you can flip the script, which says just draw 3 cards from your deck. It just literally is a draw engine from your bench. You almost never attack with this Pokemon. Honestly, you never attack with this Pokemon. The issue is If you put this on the bench, your opponent can potentially, pivot it in with some sort of gusting card, knock it out, take 2 free prize cards because it is an EX Pokemon. However, Flip the Script is so insanely valuable. Just being able to draw 3 extra cards on top of that 1 card on your turn, giving you 4 cards in your hand to then make your move for your turn is very, very powerful. Next up is Genesect, and it has the ability Ace Nullifier. Now, this isn't like a super staple card, but I want to showcase how some abilities are more controlling. And it says here, if this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool attached, your opponent can't play any Ace spec cards from their hand. That single card that they have in their deck, which might be their win con. So if you have this on your bench with a tool, they can't even play that card. Pretty strong control from a non-EX Pokemon. Next up is Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, and a lot of decks do run this because of the ability and the fact that it is a basic Pokemon. Essentially, the ability says Seasoned Skill. Blood Moon used by this Pokemon costs 1 energy less for each prize card your opponent has taken. Now, what does that mean? That essentially means if your opponent has taken 4 prize cards from knocking out 2 of your EXs, well, Blood Moon can be used for 1 energy. And if your opponent's down to their last prize card, well then Blood Moon can be used for free. That's 240. Which is crazy when you pair it up with other supporter cards in this game. Next up is Ditto. Again, not a super staple, but a very interesting ability. There are certain abilities in this game that you could only use on your first turn. So that's what I really want to showcase with this. Transformative Start. Once during your first turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may search your entire deck, choose a basic Pokemon. So this is a searching ability. There are a lot of those, especially with the trainer cards, except for Ditto, and then discard this card and all the attached cards and put that chosen Pokemon on its place instead. Then shuffle your deck. So essentially, if you start with this Pokemon, you could send it back and get something like, I don't know, a Latias EX if you wanted, or a Pheasantipity. Really, I don't know why you would choose those two, but you can. And lastly, I want to talk about Pidgeot EX, especially right before we go into the trainer cards, because searching your deck in Pokemon TCG Live is probably the biggest difference from Pokemon Pocket for Pokemon Pocket players. There's no card in Pocket that says, hey, search your deck for this specific card, because our deck sizes are 20 cards in Pokemon Pocket. That'd be kind of broken. Instead, it says, choose a random something that fits this criteria, if you will. However, in TCG Live, with the ability like Quick Search, you can search your deck for any card, add it to your hand. You can only use 1 Quick Search ability per turn, and it's kind of busted. This is pretty strong, but it's not the only card that searches. Any card that searches your deck for a specific card in TCG Live is going to be, think of not the bread, but the butter for your engines. Speaking of which, we're hopping into the trainer cards that you probably should get familiar with. Buddy Buddy Poffin searches your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less. Put them on your bench, then shuffle your deck. Searcher. Next up is Counter Catcher. This is an item gusting card. Think of like Repel and Sabrina, however, as an item and not a supporter, because there needs to be a condition met before you can use this card. And that is, you can only use this card if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent. So if your opponent's winning, then you can use this. And you could switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active spot and you get to choose, which is kind of busted. However, you are also losing. So like, here's a little catch-up mechanic, if you will. Next up is Earthen Vessel. This is a discard card from your hand in order to search your deck for 2 energy. For all those people that are like, oh my God, energy's not being in the energy zone, that's going to be so tough. There are so many cards that find you energy. There are Pokemon that just find the energy for themselves. So energy is really not a problem. And Earthen Vessel is that card. You discard 1, you draw 2, actually you search for 2, so that way you can choose the exact energies that you want. Next up is another card, but this one works with your discard pile, similar to like Volkner, right? Think of that. However, this says put 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. Another search card with Nest Ball saying search for any basic Pokemon. It's like Buddy Buddy Poffin except 1 Pokemon, and there's no HP limit. Next up is Night Stretcher. This works with your discard pile. Either find an energy or a Pokemon from your discard pile, add it to your hand. We have Paw Pad that also works with your discard pile. Find 2 supporter cards, add them to your hand. This is really good, especially if you discard your entire hand, because there is a supporter card we'll be talking about here shortly. Rare Candy. I don't need to tell you guys what this does. If you play Pocket, you know exactly what it does. It does the exact same thing. And Secret Box is an ace spec, but really there's so many ace specs to go over in this video that I can't. So I'll talk about the one that I think is probably the most powerful in my opinion. It's not there are so many other ones for different situations, but I think this one's pretty strong because you discard 3 cards and then you get to search your deck for an item card, a tool, a supporter, a stadium, reveal them and add it to your hand. So like you get to add 4 key cards for an engine to your hand, which honestly could just probably win you the game if you played this correctly. I think it's pretty busted. But then again, that's an ace spec, and that's why you can only have 1 copy of an ace spec in your deck. You can't have more than 1 ace spec in your deck, but there are so many other ace specs to go over, so we'll probably talk about those in a future video. Next up is Super Rod. You shuffle a combination of any 3 Pokemon and or basic energies from your discard pile back into your deck. Then we have Superior Energy Retrieval. You discard 2 cards from your hand, and then you find 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile and then add those to your hand. So you're losing 2 from your hand, but you're gaining 2, net 2 after you add the 4 energy. So that's not too bad. And then Ultra Ball here, where you also discard 2 cards from your hand in order to search your deck for any Pokemon, not a basic, doesn't matter, stage 1, stage 2, EXs, whatever they are, add them to your hand. This is pretty strong, especially when you combo it with something like Rare Candy and you already have the basic on your bench. Area 0 Under Depths is a stadium card that I guess we should talk about. It's only a staple in Terra decks because in this game, you're allowed to have 5 Pokemon on your bench. However, with Area 0 as a stadium and you having a Terra Pokemon or your opponent having a Terra Pokemon, essentially whatever player has a Terra Pokemon on the board can then actually have 8 Pokemon on their bench in total, or is it just their bench? It literally says it right there, on their bench. Now, if you lose that Terra Pokemon and you have like 7, you then have to discard 2. You have to send them to the discard pile in order to go back to that 5. So that is something to pay attention to. Artisan is another stadium that you might have seen in the first video that I uploaded, where both players can use this and you could find any basic Pokemon and add it to your bench as long as they're not an EX or a V or have a rule box of any sort. Mesagoza is another stadium we should talk about, where you flip a coin and if you get heads, it's essentially an Ultra Ball without discarding. So that's pretty strong. However, it's super Gamba. So if you're a Misty player, this might be your stadium. Next up is Arvin, another really strong supporter card, probably one of the stronger supporter cards in my opinion, because you search your deck for an item and a tool. This is almost always used for Rare Candy and or Ultra Ball. One or the other, and then the tool can be anything else. Boss's Orders is Cyrus, Sabrina, and Lana all fused into one. It's gusting on crack. This is what the top dogs use. They don't use Sabrina or Cyrus. It says switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot, and guess what? You get to choose. They don't choose, you choose. So if they have something that you can knock out to easily get 2 points, like I don't know, if Pheasantipity EX, like I said, the Boss's Orders, you almost always have 4 of these in your deck. Iono is another really interesting card because we have a counterpart to Iono in Pocket, but they don't work the same. Iono here says each player shuffles their hand and puts it on the bottom of their deck. You don't shuffle it back into your deck. So if you have really important cards in your hand and you use Iono, they're going to the bottom of your deck. Unless you shuffle your deck with another card like, I don't know, like Nest or some sort of searcher, those cards are staying on the bottom. That's one. The second thing is you draw the same amount of prize cards that you have left. So using this end game when your opponent has like 1 prize card left and they have 11 cards in their hand could be super valuable for you, because then you send their entire hand to their deck, bottom of their deck, and then they draw 1 card from their deck, and that's it. They better top deck or else you could potentially come back and win the entire game. So Iono is a very interesting, and it's often used for disruption. Jack Co, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Jack Q, maybe. This is another searcher. You search your deck for up to 2 evolution Pokemon, stage 1, stage 2s, reveal them, and then add them to your hand, shuffle your deck. This is really good to help you evolve, especially with Rare Candy. And Judge here, each player shuffles their hand into their deck, draws 4 cards. Next up is a bounce card, Professor Toro's Scenario, and this is a future card. Now, with this being said, there are other cards in TCG Live that also bounce. I believe Acerola does that. However, they have specific conditions, and I think more often than not, most people are going to use Professor Toro's Scenario because it has no conditions. It just says, hey, put 1 Pokemon in play into your hand. That's it. There's no conditions like you need to be an evolution, a basic, have damage, yada, this or that. So Professor Toro is probably the best bouncing supporter card in the game. I don't know, you veterans in the comments, let me know. And then Professor Research. This game's Professor Research says, hey, discard your hand and draw 7. Pretty busted. Imagine if we had a draw 7 in Pokemon Pocket. I think that'd be kind of nuts. However, discarding your hand could hurt you, so make sure you use up all the cards you could possibly want to use, and then you use Professor Research to get the most value. A tool we can talk about is Rescue Board. I feel like this is pretty good because it reduces the retreat cost by 1 for whoever it's attached to. And if that Pokemon is 30 HP or less remaining, it's actually free to retreat. Another tool we can talk about, actually before we talk about this one, let's talk about this one. This is a technical machine evolution. And what you need to do is give this to a Pokemon, make sure that Pokemon has at least 1 energy. And when you use the move evolution, you have to use the attack evolution. You search your deck for 2 evolutions for your benched Pokemon as long as you can. You evolve those Pokemon and then you shuffle your deck. And then after you do that, this tool is actually discarded. And then the de-evolution is really cool because, like you guessed it, if your opponent used something like Rare Candy to evolve and you de-evolve them, well, they lost their Rare Candy. That Pokemon gets sent to their hand. Think of like the Celebi we have. The Celebi in Pokemon Pocket, that's literally any Pokemon in TCG Live, but as a tool. And that honestly brings me right back to Bidoof. Yeah, there's really nothing else. Those are the staples. I might have missed a few here and there, but hopefully that'll help you guys better understand the games while you're playing your starter decks, especially if you're from Pocket, you know, having a good time. TCG Live is a lot of fun. I'm getting so many positive comments from you guys, so I'm very excited to continue uploading these starter guides, but also starting to create some spicy decks, especially that much closer we get to Mega Pokemon releasing in TCG Live. With that being said, guys, don't forget to like, hype, and subscribe. Thank you so much for the support, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.